All right, hello, welcome. Happy birthday to me. I mean, obviously when I'm filming this, it's not my birthday, but it just happens to be that my birthday's on a Wednesday this year. And so I'm posting this birthday video on my actual birthday. Yes, my birthday is January 8th. I am turning 28 years old. Any other 97 babies here? Let me know in the comments. A true zillennial, we are, okay? We are the middle children of the generations, and I'm honestly happy here. I don't claim either. But yes, my name's Shaina. I'm an astrologer, and today we are talking about solar return charts or solar revolution charts, however you decide to say it. And today in this video, I will be discussing what a solar return chart is, how to find one, how to interpret it, and then also a big point of this video, because it's my birthday video, is to talk about my previous solar return chart last year and how it related to my life, and also my solar return chart for this following year and what I predict. Obviously, this is going to be more of a personal video for the majority of it. However, because of solar return charts being just so wildly different to your natal chart and so wildly different to each other for pretty much each year, I feel like it'll be a good video to watch because I'll be talking about a lot of placements today that I might not normally talk about or that I might not normally have as many, personal experiences with. So I feel like this is a good video to kind of open up different discussions, and hopefully you'll still learn a lot from this video. But yeah, obviously it's a little bit more personal of a video, so we'll see how that goes. I don't know. But yes, before I get any further into the video, I sell birth chart readings on my website, shainaemily.com. So if you want me to interpret your birth chart just like how I'm interpreting this solar return chart here, then I will do that. I also am now offering a new reading called the birthday reading. I might change it to just like a solar return reading because maybe it makes more sense, but whatever. It's called a birthday reading right now, and basically it is a solar return or solar revolution chart reading. Obviously, it also will incorporate probably things like a progress chart and your natal chart, at least a little bit to kind of talk about that as well. And then I also have an astrology TikTok where I post little quippy, kitschy content. I also go live. I am going live this Monday, January 13th at 5:30 p.m. Pacific time, and I will be doing a special birthday live where I'm doing a bunch of roasts, so I'm very excited. And then I think after that I'll be moving my lives to Thursday, but just always check back on my TikTok bio because it always lists when my next live is. But yes, now that we have the housekeeping out of the way, let's just get into the main bulk of the video, and let's first talk about what is a solar return chart or solar revolution chart. So basically, a solar return chart is really easy to understand once it clicks. All it is a snapshot of the sky when the sun reaches the exact position in the zodiac as it was the second that you were born. For example, let's say you have a 28-degree, 56-minute Libra sun. So whenever the sun in the sky in the transits returns back to being in Libra at 28 degrees, 56 minutes, that exact moment, that whole chart, okay, rising, moon, Mercury, house placements, aspects, that whole chart is your solar return chart, okay, or solar revolution chart. When I say solar return, it's the same thing. I'm just gonna say solar return because it's like 2 less syllables, so we're just gonna say solar return chart for the rest of the video, but that is your solar return chart, okay? So for example, if you're curious, you have a Venus return chart and a Mars return chart, and you have a moon return chart, every month. It's not that those are wrong, because they're all good to look at if you want. It's just that I think the solar return chart just tends to be the most prominent and the one that I think affects you the most because it only happens once a year. It has perfectly to do with your birthday, so it represents the year of your life that year, and more specific sort of short-term circumstances, okay? Your natal chart is your lifelong circumstances that you're stuck with, so you better make friends with it. Your progress chart is kind of the new things that as you grow and you change that you come up to, but again, it's very slow moving and it tends to look pretty similar from your natal chart. And if you actually want to know about progress charts, I have a whole video up about what progress charts are and how to calculate it and find it and all that kind of stuff. But a solar return chart is just nice kind of to check in on what your year ahead is going to look like and where the focus is going to be. And it probably a lot of times will connect back to themes of your progress chart as well. That's basically what a solar return chart is. It's really, really simple, and you interpret it just like you'd interpret a natal chart, except it's a little bit more temporary, I guess I'll call it. So instead of saying, oh, you're somebody that has emotions like this, you probably think or say something more along the lines of, oh, throughout this year, this will be what your emotional circumstances will look like if we're talking about the moon, or this is how you'll be feeling emotionally, or this will be the nurturing energy that you receive for the upcoming year, or, Sometimes we have a year where we're much more emotional than others, you know, so on and so forth. That's basically the interpretation. And if you're wondering, yes, I still use Placidus. I do not use whole sign or any other way. I still use the tropical Placidus system with my solar return chart. I include houses, I include aspects, I include everything that you're looking at. You even include asteroids if you want to get that specific. The one thing I do not use, because I thought people might ask, is would be like a progressed solar return chart, just because I don't think there's too much of a point to it. Not that it's, again, not that it's wrong, but it's just like, well, things are only going to progress within a year, so it's not really going to move much, and I don't think it'll be too slight and small to really notice that on a wide scale. So I would just use your solar return chart. And you're also maybe wondering, can you do synastry charts between the two solar return charts? Yes, I would say I only do that with things like my solar return chart and my natal chart. Like, that's something that is really good to do. Look at the synastry between the two of those, see how they talk to each other, because that'll kind of show you how you'll get along with yourself this year, how you'll like the events of this year, how you'll like the focus of this year. Is it aligned with you or not? The other one I also do is, like, for example, with prominent people in my life, like my boyfriend, I will look at my boyfriend's solar return and my solar return and see how those talk to each other, because I think that can talk a lot about our relationship. But again, it's a more subtler influence than it would be like the synastry between two natal charts. So for example, if the synastry between the two natal charts just isn't there, but the synastry between two like solar return charts is there, maybe you guys will have a nice little fling, but it probably won't stay for the long run. So always, you know, natal charts trump everything, but it is good to look at these like subtle influences. Like maybe you're suspecting, will I maybe break up with my boyfriend this upcoming year? Maybe that'll kind of help you figure out if you think that you might, or if it would be a good idea to or not, for example. But as far as like, you know, maybe people you meet or random people here and there, I just don't think it's that important to pay attention to like the synastry between the two. There's just kind of more important charts to pay attention to. But with somebody as prominent as like my boyfriend, or like a roommate, or a dad that you're living with, or a sister that you're living with, or whatever it may be, yeah, it could be good to actually do that. But as far as like just some casual friend, I just don't think it'll impact things too much, you know? Now, if you're wanting to know how to find a solar return chart, again, we're going to go to AstroTheme. Now, AstroTheme has had a really, really shitty, fucking nasty, gross, horrible, stupid, dumb, redundant, you know, backwards moving update, but their update keeps on not updating and like being very inconsistent. And they just kind of like broke their own website because they did this like 2 days before Mercury retrograde or something like that. So I don't know why they would think to update their website like right before Mercury retrograde. Like, it's obviously going to be affected by it. Like, you're dumb, AstroTheme. Like, I love you, but you're acting dumb right now. I don't know what it is in your solar return chart, but you're acting dumb. Anyways, so I'm going to show you through AstroTheme, but it may look a little bit different, and I know you can find it on astro.com, but as far as the other websites, maybe you can, maybe you can't. If you guys know if you can or can't, you can let me know, but I know you can always find everything on astro.com, and on AstroTheme is a website that I like to use and will be using for this video, even though it's really annoying right now. If you want to find your solar return chart or solar revolution chart, which will say solar revolution because that's what it says on AstroTheme, all you have to do is hover over the little section that says astrology calculations, and then you'll find the little subcategory at the bottom right that says forecasts. And then the first one that comes up, it says solar revolution. That is the button that you click on. And then you just fill out your birth chart information normally like that. And it'll also ask you where you were on the time of your birthday. So it's important to know if you were traveling, or if you were somewhere else than you normally were, or if you'd moved during that year or something, whatever it is. The location of where you are physically at the moment of your birthday is very pertinent to find out your solar return chart. So that's something to keep in mind as well. Something I forgot to mention is that if you're anything like me, then the light bulb in your mind probably went off when I said that, and you thought, oh, does this mean that I can manipulate my solar return chart for it to be something that I'd rather want it to be by going to a different location? And the answer is honestly, yes, you can manipulate your solar revolution chart, find a good location that you like your chart at, and go there and celebrate your birthday there. Now, this obviously affects things. I did that one year. I could decide between having my solar revolution chart be in LA with an interception, the small town that I was living in California with an interception, or I could take a day trip to San Francisco and go there without an interception. So I decided to take a day trip to San Francisco, and it definitely, I think, impacted the effect of my year ahead, because I think going to San Francisco and taking the trip wound up kind of setting in place that I was going to take bigger and bolder risks this year and kind of take more control over my own life, and a bunch of a bunch of stuff wound up happening that year. And I do wonder if I would have stayed in my small town or around that area, if I would have been as bold or as strong in my actions. So it definitely does affect things, and so that is something to take into consideration. This year, I actually really like where my solar revolution chart is in the place that I'm living, so I'm happily staying here if you're curious. Another thing to mention is that, for example, like just because my birthday is January 8th doesn't mean that my solar return chart will always be happening on January 8th, because, you know, degrees kind of shift slightly. So a lot of times my solar return chart will actually happen on January 7th or January 9th. It'll never be more than a day before or a day after, but it is, I honestly think it is important to, like, maybe because I'm crazy, to like know what day and time your exact solar return chart is, and to kind of pay attention to what you're doing at that moment. Because for example, if you're having like a birthday cry on the exact moment, and maybe I had like an amazing birthday and it was like fantastic and I was happy the whole day, but then at like 5 a.m. hit and I was like up crying and bawling, but that's like the exact moment of my solar return chart when it hits. And so it's kind of setting the tone a little bit for the following year, at least if you're superstitious like me and kind of, you know, believe in that, which maybe you probably are because you're watching this, then that's gonna like impact things. Obviously, you know, you can only manipulate life so much, but I try to not be in too horrible of a mindset or too bad of a place when my exact birthday hits. And once you realize that solar return charts exist, I feel like you are very much more aware of the importance of birthdays and why we like count down and celebrate it. Because I was thinking about the fact that if you have everybody like holding a cake for you and blowing out candles and like singing you happy birthday on the exact time of your solar return chart, I feel like that would be like really good vibes, really good karma for the next year, because you have everybody like fun and celebrating, so that'll like impact the energy. So that's just something to pay attention to if you want to be like crazy and more obsessed about things. But I've also just kind of like let it flow how it flows before, and it'll be okay, you know? So it's not something to worry about too much. Don't get your panties in a bunch too much about it, you know? I'm sorry if you can hear my dogs snoring, but they're all being like really sweet angels, and they're being so cute, and they're all 4 of them are sleeping together, and I'm too much of a Cancer rising to disturb the amazing, sweet little piece right now. Anyways, so hopefully it's not too annoying, but let's get into the chart interpretation section where we're talking about my 2024 solar return chart. Here it is, here's it up. And the first thing I would like to say is that this is very different to the past chunk of years of my solar return chart. It looks very different. It looks a lot more positive. It definitely does not have as many conflicting aspects as it normally does. Normally all my charts have a prominence of on the right side, which is the Western hemisphere side, but you'll notice that this chart has actually a lot more energy than almost ever that I have on the Eastern side. So this was definitely a very different year to me than the rest of my years beforehand, and I'd have to completely agree. Also, I have no oppositions at all in this chart, and that was definitely very prominent as well. I felt like it was kind of very one track, and there was sure internal conflicts or internal, you know, friction, or even friction with, you know, external events, but there wasn't as much of a hypocrisy. Like I didn't feel split between one thing or the other. I felt very much like I was going down one track, and that was the track I was supposed to be going down, and everything was kind of somewhat reinforcing that. So it was very nice to not have any oppositions this year, and I definitely felt that in a very positive, nice way. Now I will say that when you don't have any oppositions, there is kind of a lack of balance, because everything is just kind of chunked on one part of the chart. There's a lack of that opposition, of that balance that it gives. So I definitely had a very, you know, one-sided weighted year. I mean, I'm sure you guys know, because I've talked about it a little bit already, but I've just been home the whole year. I was home the entire year. I lived a very peaceful life. I was the least social that I'd ever been in my entire life by eons and eons. I really didn't talk to many people other than my boyfriend and my dogs, who I definitely talk to more than I should. And I think that they understand me. Even if they don't, I'm convinced they do. I had just rented this house that I'm in now. I finally have a stable living place after years of not having one. And even then though, this wasn't really that stable, because we were told the whole year that they weren't going to renew our lease, and then they wound up doing so, but doing so in a month-to-month situation until they agreed to a year again. So it was still a little bit rocky for sure. We were definitely pretty convinced that we were gonna have to move again in this past November. So even though there was stability, there's still definitely some rockiness. But yeah, basically all I did was stay home and try to build my business and take care of my dogs and just kind of like prepare for a big life shift, which is going from being like, I would say kind of like a partying young adult, very free, to trying to kind of transition into, you know, having a home and like, I guess like a husband and wanting a kid in a few years and having a job or in a business and kind of being more adulty, I guess, was definitely a theme of this year. So the way that I think this translates in my progress chart is that obviously there's a lot of Capricorn energy predominantly in the first house. So this is definitely somebody that's going to be very much in the mindset that they're trying to structure their life and doing those forward thinking, future building things and be very practically minded. However, it is all intercepted. My sun, my Mars, and my Pluto, my part of fortune, they're all intercepted. And I think that makes sense because the Cancer Capricorn interception shows up in this chart. And I lost my mom a few years ago and I haven't spoken to my dad for now exactly 2 years. So there was definitely no mother or father figure in my life. I don't have anybody to supplement that quality for me. So what you'll see Cancer intercepted with no planets in there in the 7th house. And I'll get to that in a second. But that first house Capricorn interception shows that, you know, there were a lot of men around me this past year. It was like all the time. There was only men around me and I got really over it and really tired of it. I think that the Capricorn energy has planets in it because if you watch my previous video, my 2024 zodiac sign ranking, I was my own Capricorn energy, okay? I didn't have a father or some mentor or some, teacher like teaching me how to, pick myself up from my bootstraps and, find a way to make money so I can eat and, feed my dogs and pay my rent. You know what I mean? I didn't have some kind of, daddy figure doing that. I had to very much take that upon myself and do it myself. And you can tell by there being Mars and Pluto in there that I was very determined to do so. And that's where all my energy and focus went towards. And you can even see with the part of fortune that I was actually successful. Part of fortune conjunct sun. So I was actually pretty successful in doing that. It did, however, take me about, until June to really start that ball rolling. The first few months of the year were definitely very different to the last, 6 or 7. So definitely those squares show because for the beginning half of the year, I would say, I was just very broke and very hungry. And I also smoked a lot of weed now that I'm thinking about it the first few months of the year, which will come into play with that in a second. And it wasn't until I quit in April that I actually started focusing and things actually started picking up. And I will also say with all that first house energy, and because there was no 7th house energy in my life, which is so different to normal, it's so weird having an intercepted 7th house and no planets in there. That was so foreign to me. And I remember halfway throughout the year, I remember thinking like, I kind of miss my 7th house sun. Having a first house sun is very lonely, especially when it's intercepted and it's in Capricorn and it's, it's not super hard aspected. It's just like square my midheaven, square my north node, which is not the worst in my opinion, but it just gave me an extreme amount of loneliness. And even though I felt like I was very much able to be myself, very Sagittarius rising, very unabashed, very confident, very much able to be myself, I also, because of my progressed lunar return, felt like I was able to find myself actually as well, a lot more than I normally am able to because I have this very confused 7th house sun conjunct Neptune. This year, I definitely felt a lot more confident in myself. I felt more comfortable taking up space. I definitely gave myself a lot of autonomy, but that was not given to me externally. It was something that I definitely had to fight for and I had to prove for and make space for myself for, if that makes sense. I think it has a lot of themes of being the only female surrounded by a lot of men, because my boyfriend's in my life, his dad plays a very prominent role in my life, and they know a lot of men that also wind up playing prominent roles in my life, and they're all like very like car guys. And also I think that Mars in the first house, what I think about is I'm kind of the only girl around, and if I'm being honest, the people here look like the people from Hills Have Eyes. So anybody with like all their teeth is considered very attractive here. If you live in a town like that, you'll know what I'm talking about. So I definitely was very like Mars in the first house, like very sexualized. I felt like whenever any man would talk to me, he would just sexualize me and see me as like an accessory to my boyfriend. I mean, being an accessory to my boyfriend actually doesn't bother me that much because I'm like, I don't really want to talk to you anyways, and I do want to be associated with my boyfriend, so it's not that big of a deal. But definitely very uncomfortable, because anytime that I felt like I would actually maybe get along with somebody or befriend them or you know, be involved in the conversation, it was very quickly like had to be known that I was like a female and like sexualized, and it was just weird. So it makes sense that I have Mars in the first house, Pluto in the first house, but they're intercepted because it was not something that I was wanting. It's not like I'm like single and like being hit on. It's more like this guy is really creepy and he's like 80 years old and he like is missing a literal arm and a leg. Like he's literally doesn't have an arm and a leg. Like and he's being really creepy towards me. You know what I mean? Like it's not the attention that you really want. So I think that's why it was like intercepted, but I felt like I held my own. There was no real drama with it because I'm confident enough in myself. So that's why they're well aspected and they're still in the first house and all that kind of stuff. Like, okay, also with all those planets being in the first house but intercepted, I just felt like, even though I feel like a lot of people like know me now because I'm a little bit more popular on TikTok and I'm just more popular in my opinion than I've ever been online, I feel like a lot more people know me now. But in real life, nobody knows me. And in real life, less people than I've ever known in my entire life know me. But online, it's the opposite. And so I feel like that's like a bunch of people know me, Sun in the first house, but nobody actually like knows me in real life that I get to like talk to and connect with. It's intercepted. And that's why I wound up missing my 7th house Sun a lot, because I never realized how important it is for me to feel connected to people and feel heard and to hear them and to get their opinion and to bounce things off of them. Like, it was very hard for me, honestly, not having some female friend that I could like gossip with or vent to, which goes into my 7th house intercepted in Cancer. I didn't have anybody that I could talk business with. That was really hard. So I'm kind of just left kind of figuring everything out on my own, which is very intercepted Capricorn stuff in the first house, you know, business oriented. And basically how I would decide was just very Sagittarius. I just go, okay, I guess we're trying this. Okay. You know, all right, I guess this is it next. It's very like, throw out and see what sticks. You know what I mean? I didn't have a boss, but I was a very strong authority figure in my life towards myself, which is, again, all that Capricorn stuff intercepted in the first house. So I do think this was a very rewarding year. It was very interesting having my Sun in the first house, because it never, I don't think, has been, as far as I know, since I was, you know, about 19. I haven't had this. And so it was definitely a big learning process. It's a lot easier to have your Sun in your first house, I would have to say, than in your 7th house, which I'm sure we all know that. But it is very... You have to have a big ego to be able to manage it. Like, I know that sounds obvious, but it's like, you have to have a flaming huge ego to be able to manage having a first house Sun. Also, you know what's so funny is I say a lot about first house Suns that like, there's no point in giving them a reading because they like already know who they are and they'll tell you. And it's like, I kind of did feel that way this year. Like, I know my chart like the back of my hand, that it's like nobody could really tell it to me and give me any new information. Like, I kind of already know, you know? Not that there's not stuff about astrology that I don't know, because there's still so much I have to learn. But as far as my own chart, I pretty much know it, you know? You know what I mean? I guess now, I was gonna go down and around the chart, but let's just go to my 7th house interception. I have Gemini ruling the house. You'll see that my Venus is actually really well aspected, and I think it's actually really well placed. And so my relationship life was actually very nice. Now, it was more kind of sat in and accustomed, and we're trying to figure it out, but I do have a partner. However, I do not have any friends. I do not have any friends. You know, I do have a partner. I do have a well aspected Venus. I have a very nice 5th house. I have a not scary 8th house. So that intercepted 7th house, I think, spoke directly to the fact that I did not have any friends this year. It makes sense. And I definitely played the role of the Cancer in my life. I definitely was the only person kind of, for the most part, taking care of me and the dogs and the house and things of that nature. And I didn't really have time to. That was like a huge stressor. It was really hard for me to like take care of myself in that Cancerian nurturing way. It was just kind of like go, 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 go kind of situation. And yeah, I just don't have anybody in my life now that feels like a reflection of me, which is weird because normally I always have a few people in my life that I feel like reflect me very strongly. And honestly, not having that psychologically to impact me, definitely gave me a lot more time to think about my interests and pursue my career. Because normally I get very caught up in those other people in my life that I feel like reflect me and how they think of me and just all those intricacies in the psychology of it all. And this year I just didn't have that. I didn't have the drama that I normally have within relationships and friendships that normally comes with all my 7th house energy. And in that way, it was really nice. And so as much as I was really lonely and I missed having friends, I also didn't have any planets that were in the 7th house to be intercepted for me to actually want to go out and actively seek it. Something I knew needed to go, and so I sacrificed the 7th house stuff. So even though I have all this 12th house stuff, I want to quickly touch on the other planets really quickly. So we have Saturn in Pisces in the 2nd house, and it's well aspected. I had a goal this year to pay off the majority of my credit card debt, which I did, and I'm very happy about and very proud of myself for. So normally in the past, I've had a bunch of different jobs, and I make my money through probably always 2 to 4 part-time jobs. That was kind of always what I did. There would always be weird, odd ways that I would find to be able to make money. But this year it was very different. It was very Saturnian. I had 2 jobs for the first few months of the year, but once we hit the middle of the year, I only had this job. This was my only job, and it was full-time, and it was actually paying me not like a salary because it wasn't consistent, but when I recently added up all the money I made to the end of the year, I was like, I legitimately made a salary. I legitimately made an amount in one job that somebody would make at one job, if not more than that. So that was a huge deal to me because I've never done that with just one job, which Saturn in Pisces, it's a very Piscean job, it's astrology. And that's how I made my money, and that was my one sole focus, which I had never done before. I never put all eggs into one job basket in my life, and I did, and it paid off. Very positively aspected Saturn in the 2nd house. So Saturn in the 2nd house doesn't have to be bad. Now, yes, I did spend the first 4 or 5 months starving. I know I've said that a few times, but I was so hungry. It was very much a Saturnian arc where it was kind of coming from the worst place I've ever been financially to the best place I've ever been financially, which is a very Saturn in the 2nd house thing. And also it was a duty for me to make money because I have 4 dogs that are counting on me and that I'm supporting. They honestly had no idea we were struggling financially, you know what I mean? Which I think is a very Saturn in the 2nd house, well aspected kind of quality. Next up, we have Neptune in the 3rd house. I just think this makes sense because I'm in Neptune in Pisces. I'm in a very like I said, hills have eyes kind of town. You know, maybe not right now it's deliverance, but maybe 10, 15 years ago, it definitely was deliverance, you know, definitely 30 years ago, it was 1000% deliverance, you know, just with not as much water and green, just dirt, which is very to me Neptune and Pisces in the 3rd house. My surroundings were very my surroundings are just very a little neglected, I guess we'll say. My neighborhood and my community is kind of neglected. There's a lot of rundown houses, all that kind of stuff, which is just very Neptune and Pisces. Also, obviously, what did I think about and talk about all year? Astrology, Neptune and Pisces, very woozy. Also, there's that strong Pisces Sagittarius square, which I think points to the fact of how I do astrology. I feel I have a very Sagittarius bleh, kind of way of going about it, but yet the thing I'm talking about is very woo, Neptunian, where most people in the Neptunian sphere are very positive and yeah, which I can be a little bit sometimes. I can be all, you know, woozy if I want to be. Neptune and Pisces in the 3rd house. I think a lot of other people don't allow those 2 worlds to cross, and I definitely like them to, so that makes sense that square is there. Even though those Neptunes are squared, I actually don't think they were that bad. I was definitely nervous this whole year, though, that I was delusional, and that made me nervous. But then also I was the fear that I am delusional also is very Neptune square, the kind of second guessing myself and wondering if, you know, there's just always, no matter what, no matter how much I believe in astrology and no matter how much I stand by it, which I do, there's always going to be a little bit of doubt because you'll never know for sure. You know what I mean? And so as a Capricorn, that will always weigh on me. And I think that's showed by the Neptune squares. Also, things like weed and alcohol came into play a lot this year. Not to throw him under the bus, but I swear to God, if you ask him, he said this to me first, and he's very open about it. He's very honest about it. This is not me talking shit behind his back. He says it to my face. I say it to his face. He says it to people he meets. He is really bad with regulation and balance with substances. You know, he's a Sagittarius. It's very true. He's fully a Sagittarius when it comes to that stuff. He's very much all or nothing. When he smokes or when he drinks, it's very all-consuming, and I can never keep up with him. I don't think most people can keep up with him. He's very tall. He's like 6'5", and he can down a lot of beer. He can smoke a lot of weed, and that kind of played a strong influence on my life, because I'm definitely somebody who's able to do things in moderation if I'm left to my own devices, but I still have Sagittarius Venus, and I'm still influenced by my external surroundings with that stuff. It was kind of hard because I think the squares were coming in because I realized that it doesn't matter if I'm able to regulate myself if the people around me aren't. And I kind of have to bend to that. So, for example, I had to stop smoking weed, like I said, in April, which was the best thing for me because it, made me successful and focus on TikTok. And I also stopped drinking alcohol. Well, we kind of were on and off throughout the whole year, and I stopped recently again. But just because his productivity is directly linked to how much he's smoking or drinking, and when he's smoking or drinking, his productivity is very low, but when he's not, it's very, very high. So yeah, that definitely played a big role. And it has been a little bit of a sensitive topic, which adds these squares, which adds friction. It makes sense that it's specifically Mercury square Neptune in the 3rd house in Sagittarius. 3rd house is kind of like the community around me, just because it is frustrating to be like, wow, I have to give up drinking even though it doesn't affect me negatively like that, and I am able to handle it. I still have to give it up just to make my life better. So that was definitely a strong theme this year, and it was something I fought against for a long time, and I'm finally kind of now having to accept. But I know in my heart of hearts, it's for the best. It's just hard for my Venus in Sagittarius, which makes sense, the square to Sagittarius there. My Venus in Sagittarius wants to have fun, it wants to go out and it wants to party, it wants to do things every now and then, and I kind of had to give that up for, for the betterment of the home and my family. So yeah, that's, I think, where those squares played out kind of the strongest. I also think the Neptune squares have to do with, like, that moon square Neptune has to do with my mom, and my mom feeling like an entity in my life, but not feeling, just all those intricacies of my mom passing, and the Neptune ghosty, spooky stuff, and it talking to the moon in the 12th house, and I see my mom, I think, in a very Sagittarius, larger than life way, and her not being here, but still feeling her presence, and the ominous, it's just all that kind of stuff. But considering the fact that I do think that having, Sagittarius and Pisces square are a little bit easier than some of the other squares, and I do think that this 3rd house, 12th house square isn't that bad either, because they all kind of have to do with, like, mental stuff, and I like doing astrology. So in some ways, I think it just kind of got me really interested in astrology on all lenses, enjoying talking about it, enjoying thinking about it, enjoying studying about it, all that kind of stuff. So I don't think that this Neptune square was actually, I really don't think it was that detrimental. In a weird way, I think I kind of enjoyed it sometimes. It's sometimes nice to be off in your own world, Okay, now let's go on to my 4th house. So I was so happy when I saw this 4th house. I was like, this is all that matters. I just want a fucking home to be able to work from it. Because you can't work from home when you don't have a home to work from. You know what I mean? My favorite thing about this 4th house was that Jupiter in Taurus. I was like, that sounds like I'm gonna spend a lot of time in my nice, big, warm, comfy home. And you know what? I did. I spent so much time lounging around with my dogs, sitting on my recliner, editing my video, enjoying all my items. Oh, that was such a big deal because I had so much of my stuff in storage and in, like, sheds for so long, and I had no way to access it, and I was so sad about it. And so it was so nice to get to, like, organize all my things, have my whole closet, have all my tarot decks, be able to put all my stuff on my wall up, like, very Jupiter and Taurus. I was so happy about that, enjoyed the shit out of it. Jupiter having a lot of activity in the home, but it was through the lens of Taurus, so we have these big, sweet, soft, cute, cuddly dogs. 3 of them have a Venus in Taurus, and that was super the energy this year. I feel like I have a huge home. We have a big yard outside for them, and especially compared to the RV that I was living in for a year and a half before, or the random room that I was staying in with like 6 other people, it was a huge deal and it was so nice, and this is such a good placement, and I spent the vast majority of my time enjoying the peace and tranquility of my home. Now, it was still square Pluto in the 1st house, and the way that I see that is I had some issues with our landlords, as I always do. You guys all know I always have issues with the landlords. It's definitely at the best place it's ever been at right now. It took a little bit of us kind of assimilating to having a home together. So we got into some issues with our landlord, but now we're much more better. We've kind of got into more of a rhythm and it's kind of been worked out, but there was definitely, you know, some of those like authority issues that were coming up with that Jupiter square Pluto, you know? But at the end of the day, it's still Jupiter, so it worked itself out actually really well. Now, I also have Chiron right on top of the 4th house, and I think that's just like, that's just my wound from losing my mom and losing the life that I had with her, honestly, as I keep on bringing up all the time, you know, losing a family, losing all my family, not having any grandparents, only really speaking to one aunt and not having any cousins or siblings or anybody else I talk to. My boyfriend only has his dad in his family, so it's not like I have like a supplemental mom or anything along those lines, really, or like a big family that I could go to for Christmas. It's just not like that, and that's definitely a major wound of mine. And the wound also of that 4th house kind of coming from not having a home for so long and now having one, you know, that wound still stays there. That fear that this whole year of not making rent, especially in the first few months, the fear looming over of losing the house and having to move again in November was looming over me. That stuff was kind of why Chiron was in there. But it was a wound that wasn't reopened. It was a wound that was rather scabbed over, that I was just taking, it was taking a long time to heal, and it still is there, but it definitely, I don't think, was reopened and worsened, which was really nice actually. And I think that's because Jupiter was kind of in there sort of protecting that house. So while that wound was there, Jupiter was kind of like trying to help heal and aid in it, if that makes sense. And then lastly, before we get to that big 12th house energy, let's talk about Uranus positively aspected in the 5th house. I don't think this needs that much to talk about. I was creating a bunch of content. It was really fun. It was really enjoyable. I had a lot of fun time still with my boyfriend this year. We went on a lot of trips, especially in the summer. I just enjoyed creating things this year, and it was very, you know, very Uranus, very random. You know, whatever I wanted to do, I could kind of do, and I can, like I said, I can kind of make my own rules, and I didn't really have a boss. I kind of got to choose, and I got to choose my schedule. Even though I was setting a very strict schedule, I still got to like pick it and Uranus it. So I think Uranus in the 5th house was just like fun and very creative. It gave me a lot of ideas. I felt like I would wake up and shower, and if I didn't know what to do for a TikTok, it would come to me in the shower. I still have a notepad full of a bunch of, you know, ideas for my TikTok. I have a whole document of all these ideas for videos. Like, it was just very, very easy to come up with ideas for content this year and kind of produce it, you know? And I think that's very much a positively aspected Uranus in the 5th house. Now, all the 12th house stuff in Sagittarius, my Venus, my moon, and my Mercury. So the first thing that I noticed was I was like, Venus and moon in the 12th house with Cancer intercepted in the 7th house. Yeah, I'm gonna have no women around me. There's going to be no females around me as far as the eye can see, and that is absolutely true, and it sucks and is lame. Now, where there were a lot of women in my life and feminine energy in my life was my midheaven in Libra. I love that I attract predominantly girls and gays. It makes me feel very comfortable. It makes me feel safe on this platform. I know that's not, you know, I'm sure there are some straight guys out there, but I honestly love that the vast majority of my clients are females or gay men. It's just very comfortable for me. I grew up around the performing arts, so that's kind of like what I know, and it's been weird being around all these men, very foreign to me, which kind of, I think, maybe even talks to that Sagittarius energy squaring that Neptune in the 3rd house. It's a very different community to what I'm used to. But yeah, I spent a lot of time in this room, in my own sort of little isolation, in my own world, and running my own thing, and honestly, having all those energies in the 12th house, I know 2 of them are square my Neptune, but other than that, they make no harsh aspects. It was pretty pleasant. Actually, the 12th house, having these energies in the 12th house was not scary at all. It was actually nice to finally be left alone and to finally get some goddamn peace and quiet and to kind of enjoy my own little world in this room a lot of times, or whatever it may be. I definitely escaped from my reality a lot this year, but my reality was the one I created, which was like my life online and my life in this home. But it was definitely a form of escapism in a weird way. You know what I mean? Because the world makes me pissed off a lot of times. People in the world make me pissed off a lot of times. I piss off a lot of people a lot of times, and it upsets me. If I'm being honest, I upset a lot of people and that upsets me. And it was just kind of nice to not have to deal with that. Now, I did have a hidden enemy that I talked about in my last video. That was the Pisces that came up, so that makes sense with the 12th house energy, so that was the hidden enemy. But that was kind of the only real drama that I got to in real life this year, which was really nice. So I actually don't think that the 12th house is as scary as people think it is. At least my experience with these very pleasant energies being in the 12th house, you know, a benefic is Venus, moon, which is kind of, you know, what I want. I don't think actually moon in the 12th house is that bad. Now, I will say yes. My emotions were not validated this year, you know, because as much as my boyfriend may try, he's still a boy and he's still the only person in my life. So there's only so much he can do. You know what I mean? And yes, my Mercury is in my 12th house. I totally see why it's conjunct my ascendant, but in my 12th house, because I talk so much. Obviously, I talked a ton this year, and it was all about astrology, and it was very, you know, Sagittarius, blah, 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 you know what I mean? But in real life, when the only people you talk to are old men with no teeth that like cars and motorcycles, there's nothing I have to talk to with them. There's absolutely nothing. And I would go and be around these environments a lot to be supportive to my boyfriend. And I just didn't ever get to talk or share about who I was or hear any other conversation other than about cars that I just don't know about. And I do have a pretty, I am interested in cars, but I don't know the inner workings of them. So I didn't really have anything to say. I was quiet most of the time and I felt really bored, and I just found myself thinking about whatever and kind of escaping whenever I was out and about and being like, when are we gonna go home? You know what, also, I played The Sims so much towards the like maybe last third of the year. I played The Sims so much, which is very 12th house Sagittarius energy, because obviously my Sims game is chaos, like come on Sagittarius, but it's 12th house. It's very much like escapism, escaping this reality, all that kind of stuff. But yeah, basically all that it was with the 12th house stuff is that it just felt a little bit maybe invalidated by the external world, but that was okay because I have enough first house stuff to validate it myself this year. You know what I mean? Honestly, I do think it is a lot harder to have planets in the Western Hemisphere than the Eastern Hemisphere. I have had a much easier year this year, and I normally always have a lot of planets, as I mentioned, in the Western Hemisphere, that side of the chart. So I don't know, it kind of solidified that because the Eastern Hemisphere is more personal. It's kind of like you're dealing with yourself, and it's not that, I don't know, it's fine. I like the 12th house stuff. I thought it was nice. I thought it was fine. I thought it got me more into tarot and spirituality and astrology and creating my own little world and not dealing with all the fucking stupid shit on the outside world. I think it's actually, it made me kind of look differently at 12th house stuff. And I feel like the big scary stuff is like, what, people can't handle it? Can people not handle isolation? It's very nice and it's very peaceful. I don't know why it's such this big spooky thing to have all this stuff in the 12th house. Now, if Pluto was there, if Saturn was there, if Mars was there, maybe even if Neptune or Uranus was there, maybe I'd feel a little bit differently. Maybe even if my sun was there. I don't know. Maybe I kind of don't think I'd mind 12th house sun. It just seems peaceful as fuck. It seems peaceful as fuck. And yes, you're not being externally validated and whatever, but it's like, I don't feel like I needed it. I don't feel like I needed it at all. I felt like, good, leave me the fuck alone. So I don't know. I'm kind of pro 12th house stuff now. It's kind of, I think, in my opinion, a lot easier than some other stuff because it's not as demanding. So screw all you 12th house crybabies out there. You need to get over it. No. So yeah, that was my, little rendition of my solar return chart and how it affected me this year. Maybe you learned something from it, who knows? And now we'll just quickly, I don't want to talk about this for long at all. We'll just quickly talk about my chart for this upcoming year when I'm 28. So first off the bat, again, I was so happy to see that it looked pretty similar to this year's chart because I had such a nice year this year, like such an amazing year. The first few months were really hard. I'm not gonna lie. I would never want to relive those again. But once we got past it, it became like April. I would relive that in a second. So I kind of am. So I'm like really happy about it with this chart. Everything you will notice is pretty much on the Eastern Hemisphere, which again, I'm kind of excited about. It makes me feel like I'm kind of doing my own thing, working. This is definitely the ideal chart, in my opinion, for somebody who wants to work and build a business. I have been asking for my solar return sun to be in the 10th house for so many years now, and I'm so glad it finally is. It has one opposition, which does worry me, which is Mars opposite Pluto, and my Mars in the Cancer retrograde opposite Pluto is very much worrying me a little bit, but I'm trying to say, hey, there's still some good aspects to it. But yeah, it does worry me. I am very familiar with this energy because I have it natally Mars in my 4th house opposite my Saturn in my 10th house. This time it's just different because it's Mars in the 4th house opposite Pluto. So I feel like it's opposite Pluto because I have a little bit more of a oomph to me. I have a little bit more of a determination to me. I hold a little bit more of authority than I normally do. And I feel like that's that Plutonic energy. I'm a little bit more cautious. Now, what I am worried about is I am worried about potentially getting a little bit canceled in some way this year. I do feel like I will inevitably I feel like inevitably that will happen to me because people already are trying to, people already online don't like me and stuff like that. So I feel like it has a potential to happen, and I feel like this kind of supports it. But the rest of it is well aspected. Then it makes me think I'll kind of come out of it stronger, potentially. And again, I have an Aries rising. I don't think I've ever had an Aries rising. I'm really excited about that. I have a Taurus moon, and it's really well aspected, and Taurus is really well aspected to how it is in my natal chart. So that moon is just doing wonders. It's doing wonders natally, and it's doing wonders in my synastry. It's even working well with my progressed moon in Capricorn. Like, it's just kind of all working together, and it just makes me feel like I'll be well off. I'll be doing okay financially and comfort-wise. Second house stuff makes sense. I get my income on a little bit of a up and down level, but I have Jupiter in there that I think will help me out. And also with Jupiter being in Gemini, I think it's saying I'm earning my money through the things that I say and my intellect and the way I communicate, which is really nice to hear. I like to hear that. And another thing that I'm really happy about is that I don't have an interception. I do not have an intercepted 7th house. So I feel like I might have potential to make one female friend. That's really my goal, is just to have like one female around me, just to have some feminine energy around me because I miss it like hell. But with my Venus being in the 12th house, I don't know if that's going to happen again. I'm kind of preparing myself for another year of not really having many friendships around me. But it seems like it'll be good, again, for my relationship. And just in general, it feels good. I have an insanely well aspected moon in my progress chart. The best it's going to be probably ever. So I feel like this is really going to be my best year ever. I really do feel that way. And I'm not saying it's going to be easy or it's going to be smooth sailing. I think that Mars opposite Pluto is going to give me some gruff and some issues. So I do really think this is going to be my best year. I do. I really do. So we'll see if I'm right, because astrologically, that's kind of what it's saying. And in my heart of hearts, that's what I'm feeling as well. So yeah, we'll see if this is kind of like my best year ever. We'll see how it goes. But yeah, thank you so much for watching. But again, if you want me to deconstruct your own personal solar revolution chart, I sell birthday readings on my website, shainaemily.com. I have an astrology TikTok. I go live there pretty much every week. Just check my bio to see the next time I go live. Thank you so much for watching. What is your solar revolution chart right now, and like, how is it affecting you? I always like to hear you guys' stories. You can let me know, sun, moon, and rising, and how you find it affecting you, whatever it may be. But thank you so much for watching. Happy birthday to me and any other Capricorns out there. Happy birthday to all the Capricorns. Yes! All right, I love you guys very much. Thank you for supporting me. Thank you for being here. And yeah, all right. Bye.